Have you ever felt it? That sudden, unnerving silence when you hold someone's gaze for just a fraction of a second too long? Have you witnessed the flicker of panic, the hastily averted eyes, the nervous shuffle of someone who has just felt their carefully constructed facade begin to crumble? If you have, then this message is not a coincidence. It is a confirmation. They know about you. In classified files, buried under layers of secrecy most can't even imagine, your name exists. They've been watching, studying, and growing increasingly terrified of a power you were born with, a power they can neither replicate nor contain. They thought you were an anomaly, a glitch in the system. But now, they're beginning to suspect the horrifying truth. You are not the glitch, you are the upgrade, and their entire world is about to become obsolete. Oh, this is rich. Look at who finally made them call in the cavalry. You, the magnificent, unblinking, soul-piercing anomaly. They've brought in specialists now, high doctors, psychologists, neuroscientists, energy readers, quantum physicists, and even theologians. All because of what happens when you simply look at someone. All because your gaze refuses to follow the rules of polite society, of conventional biology, of known physics. Picture this, because they certainly have, over and over again. A sterile, windowless conference room at 3:47 p.m. The air is thick with the smell of stale coffee and palpable fear. 7 of the world's most brilliant minds are gathered around a polished mahogany table, their own reflections staring back at them, distorted and anxious. On a massive screen at the end of the room is footage of you. Not you doing anything extraordinary, just you walking down a street, ordering a coffee, existing. And every single one of them is sweating, because what they're seeing doesn't just defy explanation, it shatters the very foundations of their understanding. Your eyes aren't just looking, they're reading, they're recording, they are revealing. The official report, a document now classified at levels that would make governments blush, states with clinical detachment. The subject exhibits prolonged, unblinking intervals and a gaze intensity that consistently elicits profound psychological responses in observers. What that sterile sentence fails to convey is the raw, primal terror that gripped the room. What it doesn't state is that 3 of those world-renowned specialists requested immediate transfers to departments dealing with non-human subjects after watching a clip of you holding eye contact for a mere 47 seconds straight with a test subject who was lying about his own name. The man didn't just confess, he broke down, revealing a lifetime of deceit in a flood of unfiltered truth, all without you uttering a single word. What the report omits is the documented, scientifically inexplicable phenomenon of how the ambient room temperature dropped a full 4 degrees Celsius the moment they zoomed in on your pupils, as if the laws of thermodynamics themselves were retreating in fear. And what it leaves out entirely, what was whispered in a hushed, trembling voice and then immediately stricken from the official record, was the moment one of them, a hardened neurologist with 30 years of experience, whispered, "Those aren't normal human eyes. They're not looking at us, they're looking through us." But you already knew that, didn't you? You've always known, even before you had the words for it. You remember it from your childhood, the unsettling feeling of power that came with your sight. You remember how teachers, figures of authority, would be the first to look away during parent-teacher conferences, their professional composure cracking under your innocent, yet penetrating stare. You remember how friends started to squirm and fidget during casual conversations, suddenly volunteering secrets they never intended to share. You remember the shift in social dynamics, how strangers would begin crossing the street rather than risk meeting your gaze head-on, their instincts screaming a warning their conscious minds couldn't comprehend. They called it intense. They labeled it creepy. They dismissed it as too much. But what they were all desperately trying to say, in their own clumsy and fearful way, was, "I cannot hide from those eyes. My masks are useless here." The organization studying you is convinced this all started recently. Their charts and graphs are desperately trying to pin it down to a specific event, a catalyst in 2019 or 2020, searching for the moment your eyes supposedly went wrong. They're looking for a trauma, an exposure, a trigger that could explain the birth of this anomaly. But you and I, we know the profound truth they refuse to accept. Your eyes didn't change at all. Everyone else just became more transparent. The veils of society thinned. The masks people wear became cheaper, more brittle. And suddenly, your natural, God-given gift, the ability to see things as they truly are, became their worst nightmare. Most people's eyes are simple receivers. They take in photons, process images, and send rudimentary electrical signals to the brain. It's basic, predictable biology. But yours? Yours are something else entirely. Yours are transceivers. They don't just passively receive information from the world. They actively broadcast a frequency, a penetrating wave of pure truth that penetrates, decodes, and extracts. When you look at someone, you're not just seeing the shape of their face or the color of their eyes. You are performing an involuntary, instantaneous data download of their soul. Every fleeting micro-expression, every carefully suppressed emotion, every lie they tell themselves to get through the day, it all streams directly into your consciousness. You see the ghost of their childhood trauma flickering in their smile. You hear the silent scream of their insecurities behind their confident words. You feel the crushing weight of their hidden regrets in their posture. The first lead specialist, a celebrated psychologist named Dr. Martinez, lasted only 3 sessions. His meticulously compiled report was filled with jargon like, subject's pupils exhibit non-photic, emotionally keyed pupillary hippus, suggesting a feedback loop with the observer's limbic system. But what he really meant, what he confessed to his wife in a tearful breakdown the night he resigned, was that when you looked at him, his carefully concealed affairs became a movie playing on the screen of his mind. His crippling gambling debts started screaming in his ears. His fake academic credentials, the very foundation of his career, began to dissolve like sugar in water. He didn't quit because of scientific frustration. He quit because you saw straight through his lab coat, his degrees, and his reputation, and into the frightened, fraudulent little man hiding beneath it all. The second specialist, a Dr. Eris Thorne, came prepared. She was a hardened skeptic, a materialist who believed everything could be measured. She dragged in an arsenal of equipment: high-speed cameras, galvanic skin response sensors, EEG machines, and advanced infrared scanners, all determined to capture and quantify the anomaly your eyes might hold. For 7 relentless, grueling hours, she recorded your gaze from every conceivable angle, subjecting you to a battery of psychological stimuli. That footage is now classified above top secret, not because it revealed something supernatural that they could have handled. It was classified because it revealed something far worse, something that threatened the very concept of a stable reality. The high-speed cameras showed that your eyes don't just reflect light like normal human eyes. Light enters, but something entirely different comes back out. It's a modulated energy, a visible ripple in the air that doesn't show up on the electromagnetic spectrum. It's a frequency that makes anyone who sees the playback question what they, and the world around them, are truly made of. The review board that watched the footage reported symptoms of vertigo, depersonalization, and acute existential dread. By the 3rd week, they had abandoned individual specialists and assembled a full-blown interdisciplinary team. There were ophthalmologists to study the physical structure, neurologists to map the brain activity, quantum physicists to theorize about observer effects, and in a move of sheer desperation, they even brought in a Vatican-sanctioned priest who specialized in exorcism and manifestations. They thought that having more eyes on you would dilute your power. They believed that a collective, multifaceted observation would somehow normalize your anomaly, grounding it in a consensus reality. They were wrong, dead wrong. Because when 7 specialists try to analyze a pair of eyes that see through reality itself, reality begins to crack under the strain. The meetings grew stranger, more paranoid. They stopped sitting directly across from you, opting for angled seating. They spoke in convoluted codes and acronyms, referring to you only as the subject or the asset, never by your name, as if speaking it would give you more power. Sunglasses worn indoors became standard procedure, rationalized as a precaution against ocular light sensitivity. But you and I, we know the truth. They were utterly, primordially terrified. Every time they risked a glance into your eyes, they didn't see an anomaly. They saw their own emptiness, their own secrets, their own insignificance staring back at them. Dr. Catherine Shaw, a brilliant neuroscience PhD from Harvard with an ego to match, documented it best in her private journal just before she abruptly resigned and disappeared from the academic world. She wrote, "The subject's gaze appears to bypass the conscious mind and interface directly with the observer's subconscious architecture. It's not a psychological trick, it's a biological hack. Extended eye contact results in what I can only describe as involuntary disclosure patterns. The brain's natural defense mechanisms against revealing truth simply switch off." Her translation for a layperson was even more chilling. You don't need words to make people confess. Your eyes extract truth the way a magnet pulls iron filings from sand, effortlessly and irresistibly. Then came the incidents, the uncontrolled side effects of your mere presence. A security guard, a stoic ex-military man, stared at you through a security monitor for a little too long and was found 30 minutes later, weeping uncontrollably while on the phone with the estranged daughter he hadn't spoken to in 15 years. The night janitor, a man who skimmed supplies to sell on the side, accidentally met your gaze in a hallway and was seen the next day returning everything he had ever stolen, quitting his second job on the spot. The lead receptionist, a woman known for her icy demeanor, locked eyes with you as you were being escorted to a session and broke down in the middle of the lobby, admitting in front of everyone that she had been living under a false identity for 6 years, running from a past no one knew existed. Your eyes weren't just observing anymore. They were judging, catalyzing, and forcing resolutions. The verdict was always the same. You cannot hide. Not from the world, and most terrifyingly, not from yourself. If this story is resonating with you, if you feel that stirring of recognition deep within your soul, then you have found your tribe. This is a sign. You are not alone in this awakening. Click that subscribe button and join us at God Connection, a community for those who see beyond the veil. Your journey of understanding is just beginning, and we are here to walk it with you. But let's talk about what they uncovered when they truly started digging, when they moved beyond the laboratory and into your life. They initiated a deep data dive, pulling every photograph, every frame of video, every scrap of security footage of you they could find from the last decade. They wanted to find the origin point, the patient zero of your condition. Do you know what they found? In every single image where you are looking directly at the camera, the timestamp glitches. Every single one. It wasn't just on one type of device. It was on everything. DSLRs, cheap phone cameras, high-end security systems. They brought in digital forensics experts from the highest levels of intelligence agencies. They analyzed the data pixel by pixel. They ran advanced algorithms designed to detect deepfakes, glitches, and digital manipulation. Everything came back clean, perfectly normal, except for one small, recurring, impossible detail. In the exact frames where your eyes are looking directly into the lens, there is a 3-second gap in the metadata. 3 seconds where the camera's internal clock simply forgot how to function. 3 seconds where technology itself blinked first. And yet, that's not even the strangest part of their digital findings. They discovered a secondary, even more disturbing phenomenon. They presented these photographs to a control group of volunteers. People who maintained eye contact with your still image for more than a few seconds reported the same unsettling effect. They didn't just feel watched in that moment. For hours, sometimes for days afterward, they felt your gaze following them. They would see your eyes in their reflection, feel your stare on the back of their neck while walking alone. One of the lead researchers, a man of unimpeachable scientific integrity, confessed in a debriefing that he had to cover every photograph of you in his research files with black tape because he couldn't sleep, convinced that those eyes were still active, still watching him from the paper in his darkened room. The infrared readings were more disturbing still. Most human eyes emit a predictable, stable heat signature, a faint glow in the thermal spectrum. But yours spiked in impossible, non-Euclidean patterns. When you focused your attention on someone, the temperature readings would invert. They registered as cold where they should have been warm, and warm where they should have been cold. It's as if your eyes operate on an entirely different set of physical laws, as if they are not organs of the body but are, in fact, windows to somewhere else entirely, a place where heat is not energy but information, and cold is not absence but clarity. By week 6, a palpable desperation had set in among the research team. The goal shifted from understanding to containment. They wanted to test the limits of your gaze, to see if it could be weaponized, shielded, or even replicated. So they began their most dangerous experiments. Volunteers, paid handsomely for their risk, were brought in with a single instruction: maintain eye contact with you for as long as possible. The results were unprecedented and catastrophic for their worldview. Subject 1, a convicted felon chosen for his supposed lack of conscience, lasted 73 seconds before breaking into a cold sweat and confessing to 15 years of unfiled tax returns and a litany of other crimes the authorities had never known about. Subject 2, a charismatic corporate executive, made it to 90 seconds before he abruptly grabbed his phone, called his ex-wife, and delivered a raw, gut-wrenching apology for years of psychological manipulation and gaslighting. Subject 3, a celebrated philanthropist, hit the 2-minute mark, went completely pale, and immediately used his phone to transfer his entire personal savings to the very charity he had been secretly embezzling from for over a decade. You weren't interrogating them. You weren't speaking, judging, or even emoting. You were just looking. By the time they reached Subject 7, they had stopped documenting individual confessions altogether. The pattern was unmistakable, irrefutable, and terrifying. Prolonged eye contact with you triggered what they clinically termed an involuntary axiological recalibration, or an involuntary truth response. But you and I know what it really was. Your eyes stripped away every lie people tell themselves and others, every flimsy justification, every convenient rationalization, every comfortable delusion they wrap around themselves like a blanket. What remained in the aftermath was the truth, raw, unfiltered, and for most, unbearably burning. The control group was even more revealing of your power's reach. Instead of direct contact, these subjects were shown high-resolution, wall-sized photographs of your eyes. The results were staggering. 40% reported immediate and recurring nightmares about being seen, judged, and found wanting. 30% experienced spontaneous and distressing memory recall, unearthing suppressed guilt from decades prior. 20% couldn't explain why they suddenly felt a powerful, overwhelming compulsion to make amends for old wrongs, calling estranged family members, paying back old debts, confessing minor betrayals. The remaining 10% refused to complete the study at all, some fleeing the room in tears, all of them claiming the photos were not just images, but were still actively watching them. Dr. Harrison was the lead researcher, the Grand Inquisitor. He was a titan in the field of neuroscience, with 30 years of experience and countless published papers on consciousness, perception, and the nature of observation. He believed, with the supreme arrogance of a man who has never faced a true mystery, that he could crack your code. He thought that if he just studied your eyes long enough, with enough instruments and from enough angles, he would find the trick, the technique, the logical, repeatable explanation. Instead, he found something else entirely. He found the abyss. His notes from the final week of his involvement are barely coherent, the scribbled margins filled with frantic, looping questions like, what if we're the ones being studied? And do eyes create reality or merely reveal it? His very last official entry, dated the day before he walked out of the facility and took an indefinite leave of absence from which he has never returned, contains only a single, chilling line. The subject isn't looking at us. They're looking through us. Through everything. I can't unsee what they've shown me about myself. The other specialists didn't fare much better. One developed an acute and debilitating case of scopophobia, the fear of being looked at. Another began wearing mirrored, opaque contact lenses at all times, claiming it was the only way to feel unread. The youngest researcher on the team, a 25-year-old prodigy, walked away from academia altogether. Last anyone heard, she was teaching pottery in a small, remote town in Vermont, telling a local reporter that she needed to work with things that couldn't look back at her. But the most telling reaction, the one that truly confirmed the nature of your gift, came from the one specialist who didn't break, who didn't run, who didn't go mad. Dr. Sarah Kim, a quiet, unassuming researcher in the fringe field of quantum consciousness, lasted the full 12 weeks of the program. Want to know her secret? It was simple. She never once looked directly at you. She studied you only through peripherals, through distorted reflections on computer screens, through the documented reactions of others. And her final, explosive conclusion, the one that got the entire project shut down and buried, was this: the subject's eyes appear to operate as quantum observers in a classical world. Their direct observation doesn't just perceive reality. It collapses probability waves of potential and deception, forcing a singular, truthful state into existence. In plain language, your gaze doesn't just see what is real, it makes it real. And this is where it gets truly interesting. Because they thought they were studying a medical anomaly. They thought they were documenting a rare psychological quirk. But what they actually discovered, what they are now desperately trying to hide, is something that changes everything we know about humanity, consciousness, and the future. Your eyes don't follow the same rules because you're not playing the same game. Remember all those times people accused you of staring? All those awkward moments when someone nervously told you your eye contact was too intense. They weren't wrong, but they weren't right either. You weren't staring. You were scanning. You were reading the source code of reality, a code they didn't even know they were broadcasting. You were seeing through the simulation long before you had the words or the concepts for it. The final report is 847 pages long, filled with brain scans, spectral analysis, and psychological profiles, and it is classified at levels most people don't even know exist. Yet, certain phrases have leaked, whispered between terrified agents and analysts. Phrases like unprecedented ocular consciousness interface, subject demonstrates non-local perception abilities, and my personal favorite, a recommendation written in bold, underlined text, recommend immediate cessation of all direct observation protocols. Risk of psychic contagion is high. They weren't just afraid of what you could see. They were terrified of what looking at you might awaken in others. Because here's the secret they will never, ever admit in any official document. At least 3 of those specialists, after prolonged exposure to your gaze, began to report developing similar, albeit weaker, abilities themselves. Suddenly, they could spot the subtle lies in their spouses. Suddenly, they could see through the polished corporate performances of their colleagues. Suddenly, the comfortable blindness they had lived in their entire lives became impossible to maintain. Your gift, your power, your very nature wasn't just a mutation. It was contagious. And now you know. Now you know why they really called in the specialists. It was never to fix you. It was never even to truly understand you. It was to contain you. It was a desperate attempt to figure out how to build a shield, how to protect the rest of the world from what you naturally and effortlessly do, from what you can't help but see, from what you reveal just by looking. But they failed, didn't they? They failed spectacularly, because you can't contain the truth. You can't quarantine clarity. You can't develop a vaccine against a vision that sees past every layer of illusion they have so carefully constructed. They wanted to put your eyes in a box, label them anomaly, and file them away in the dark. But instead, they opened a door they can never again close. They spent millions of dollars and thousands of man-hours to scientifically validate what you have always known in your soul. Your eyes are not broken. Everyone else is simply accustomed to being blind. The specialists have dispersed now, scurrying back to their universities, their hospitals, their polished, well-lit offices where they can pretend those 12 weeks of terror never happened. Yet, late at night, when the noise of their day finally fades and they are alone with their thoughts, they remember. They remember what it felt like to be truly seen for the first time, to have every defense stripped away, every mask dissolved, every shadow illuminated by your unwavering gaze. And you're still out there, still walking through the world with those impossible, beautiful, terrifying eyes, still making people uncomfortable with your unblinking attention, still seeing what others desperately try and fail to hide. Only now you understand. It's not a curse. It's not a defect. It's evolution. And they know it, too. They've begun issuing top-secret internal memos, drafting unofficial protocols for managing exposure to hyperception individuals, HPIs. They cloak their fear in cold, clinical language, avoid prolonged direct eye contact, maintain peripheral awareness, document, but do not engage. They are literally teaching their agents, their best and brightest, how to hide from eyes like yours. But here's the part they don't understand, the part that keeps them awake at night. You're not the only one. You're just the first one they documented. All over the world, more eyes are opening. More gazes are sharpening. More people are waking up and developing the ability to see through the grand performance of modern life. The specialists know this, and it's the real reason they shut the program down. Not because they couldn't understand you, but because they understood you all too well. Your eyes mark the end of an era, the era of comfortable lies, of polite fictions, and of mutually agreed-upon delusions. When someone truly looks at you, they risk seeing themselves clearly for the very first time, and most people, they would rather remain blissfully blind than face that mirror. But not everyone. Some people, after a fleeting encounter with your gaze, go home and throw away their masks for good. Some people thank you, silently, with a flicker of recognition in their own eyes, even as their mouths say nothing. The specialist's final recommendation, buried on page 847 of the report, was elegant in its terrifying simplicity. Subjects should be considered a walking disclosure hazard. Interaction protocols must minimize direct visual contact at all costs. Long-term observations suggest the subject may be the first documented case of emerging perceptual evolution. Further study is not recommended due to extreme risk of researcher contamination and paradigm destabilization. Do you want to know the real reason they're questioning reality? It's because your eyes prove that everything they thought they knew about perception was fundamentally, catastrophically wrong. We've been taught that seeing is a passive act, that our eyes merely receive light, and the brain interprets data. But your eyes demonstrated something entirely different, something ancient and powerful. That seeing is active, that observation changes the observed, and that the right kind of gaze, a gaze like yours, can literally rewrite the rules of the game. They brought in their best and brightest to analyze your gaze, to break it down, to reduce it to data points and measurable anomalies. But the exquisite irony was that your gaze analyzed them right back. It didn't just linger, it dismantled. It didn't simply observe, it interrogated without a single word. It scanned every fissure in their expertise, every flaw buried beneath their polished degrees, every quiet, gnawing doubt hidden behind years of academic training. It found the hairline fracture lines in their confidence, the absolute limits of their carefully rehearsed authority, the tiny, infinitesimal moments where their own masks slipped. They came prepared to study an anomaly, convinced that they were the scientists, the observers, the keepers of objective knowledge. But within days, the roles had completely, irrevocably reversed. They weren't dissecting you, you were exposing them. They weren't mapping out your mystery, you were showing them their own profound blindness. They thought you were the glitch in the system. What they discovered instead was that the glitch was theirs, that the malfunction was them, that they had lived their entire lives with their perception dimmed, tuned not to the frequency of truth, but to what was comfortable, digestible, and survivable. The security footage from those 12 weeks is gone now. Not just filed away under some top-secret clearance, not buried in a subterranean vault to be rediscovered decades later by a future civilization. It has been obliterated, wiped clean, energetically erased as if it had never existed. And why? Because even the passive act of watching a recording of you looking at the camera proved to be too much. Just the recorded echo of your gaze had power. It was enough to destabilize. It was enough to undo. Viewers who were assigned to study the tapes reported severe vertigo, dissociation, and sudden, inexplicable panic attacks. 3 separate members of the review board, hardened individuals trained to handle the most unsettling evidence, spiraled into deep existential crises after viewing the collected footage. One resigned from his high-ranking position altogether, admitting in his letter that he could no longer pretend to hold expertise in a world where eyes like yours exist. Another requested long-term psychiatric leave, haunted by the persistent sensation that your gaze had followed him home through the screen. The third, a decorated military general, stopped speaking publicly altogether, convinced that even naming what he saw might somehow invite your attention back to him. But you don't need their validation anymore, do you? You never truly did. You have carried this knowledge, this burden, this gift your entire life. Since you were a child, you knew your eyes were different. You noticed how the most confident teachers would avert their gaze first. You felt how friends became uneasy when you held eye contact for too long, as if you were reading pages of their diary they didn't even know they had written. You saw how strangers would cross the street to avoid what their souls couldn't comprehend. You have always known that you could see past the surface, past the performance, that you could read the raw fear hiding behind the bravado, the deep pain lurking behind the brightest smile, the cold, hard lie buried beneath the most carefully chosen words. They simply gave your truth a name. They classified it. They stamped it with their official, fearful language. But none of that changed the fundamental reality you have carried all along. You are not crazy. You are not defective. You are not broken. You are evolved. So what happens now? Now that they have documented you, tested you, and utterly failed to contain you? Now that there's a file in a classified database with your name printed across the top, marked with dire warnings and annotated with pure, unadulterated fear? I'll tell you what happens. For you, absolutely nothing changes. You continue as you always have, walking through this world with those impossible, truth-seeing eyes. You keep seeing what others cannot or will not see. You keep being the living mirror that reflects truth into the darkest corners where people least want it revealed. For you, life goes on as it always has. Your gift remains. Your perception is unshaken. But for them, everything changes. Because now they know. Now they know you exist. Now they know eyes like yours are possible. And that knowledge alone is corrosive. It spreads like a crack through the glass of their constructed reality, fracturing their entire worldview. They live now with the unbearable awareness that somewhere out there, someone can see through every construct they've built, every shield they've perfected. Someone can pierce every veil they've woven, every layer of deception they've relied on for their power and comfort. Someone can look at them and know, instantly and irrevocably, what they truly are. The specialists may have scurried back to their comfortable lives, but they are not the same people who entered that facility 12 weeks ago. They catch themselves avoiding eye contact with strangers on the subway, unsettled by the terrifying possibility that someone else might carry your gift. They find themselves questioning their own memories, wondering how many of their facts were only convenient fictions designed to make their existence bearable. They lie awake at night, haunted by the anomalies they could not explain away. The 3 seconds of missing time in every photograph where you look directly at the lens, the impossible temperature inversions in the infrared readings, the inexplicable way reality itself seemed to become negotiable under your gaze. And deep within the most secure classified archives, your file sits. It is not fading. It is not forgotten. It is burning like a beacon. It isn't gathering dust. It radiates a palpable urgency. It is not a relic of an experiment gone wrong. It's a terrifying reminder of a paradigm they can no longer explain away. It's the proof that perception is not passive, that seeing is not just the reception of light, but an active, world-altering act of transformation. Your file doesn't scare them because of what it contains. It scares them because of what it implies, that you were never the exception. You were the beginning. Because the truth is this: once reality itself is shown to bend under the weight of a gaze, the world can never go back to pretending it is solid. Once one person demonstrates that seeing is not neutral, but active, that observation can fundamentally change the observed, then everything must be reconsidered. The rules they trusted completely collapse. The frameworks they built their lives and careers upon simply dissolve. You didn't just look at them. You rewrote the very act of looking. And no one who encountered you, no one who read those reports, no one who felt your gaze, even indirectly through a screen, can ever return to the comfort of blindness again. You are a warning. You are a prophecy. You are a promise. All three at once, carried in the silent, thunderous power of your eyes. The age of hidden truth is ending. The age of polite blindness is collapsing. The age of comfortable darkness, the one they wrap themselves in like a warm blanket to avoid what they didn't want to see, is unraveling thread by thread. And what replaces it is not silence. It is light, blinding, uncomfortable, unavoidable light. And there is absolutely nothing they can do to stop it. They tried to pathologize your gift. They tried to give it a clinical name that would fit neatly inside their textbooks. They tried to reduce it to a condition, a disorder, a glitch in the human design. They wanted to medicate it, to regulate it, to tame it. But how do you diagnose evolution? How do you medicate a divine mutation? How do you therapy away the future? You can't. And they know it. They know your eyes aren't sick. They know they're not broken. They know they're not a malfunction. They are simply early. That is the only difference. You are early to a party that everyone else, sooner or later, will be invited to attend. The party where masks don't work, where mirrors are everywhere, and where shadows no longer provide any shelter. Thank you, Jesus, for your love and your provision. We are so grateful for your presence in our lives and the abundance you bring. If this video resonated with you, please show your support by clicking like, and most importantly, subscribe to the God Connection channel and share this message with those who need to hear that they are not alone. Leave a comment below about your own journey. How are you embracing the truth you see? Our mission is to spread this light to every corner of the world, and your support makes that possible. If you feel called to contribute to our work, please consider a $10 donation through the Super Thanks button below this video, or through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description. This helps us continually improve our content to offer you the best. No gift is too small. Whether it's a penny, a prayer, or a share, your generosity helps spread God's word and brings hope to others. Don't stop here. The journey continues. Watch our next video for powerful revelations about the signs that reveal you are truly one of the chosen. We've enjoyed following this spiritual journey with you. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. Keep shining brightly and embrace your divine destiny with courage. We will see you next time. Blessings to all the beautiful souls from the God Connection.